Introduced back in 1991, the Ford Explorer has been a staple in the SUV market. However, with like the Highlander, the Pilot, the Telluride, and the Palisades, well, the Explorer has kind of leaned back a little bit. For 2025, it's been refreshed and it is quite a good contender. It was updated back in 2020 for the 6th generation of the Ford Explorer. For 2025, you get some updated exterior bits, interior bits, and it just makes the Explorer feels a little bit more fresh in today's market. Is it worth your money? Well, I think it is at least worth looking at, because in driving the Explorer for the past week, I've actually quite enjoyed it. And it's not just because it's a large 3-row SUV and it's all the right amount of space and whatnot. It actually drives quite well. But before I get to that, let's talk about what you're here to know. It's a 3-row SUV. What's the space like? Behind the 3rd row, you get 18 cubic feet of space, which is quite sufficient. There's a little bit more storage underneath the floor, and there's also a compact spare tire there. If you fold down the 3rd row with the button here on the side, it expands to almost 50 cubic feet. Definitely more than enough for most families. Fitting into the 3rd row, it's quite tight. The 2nd row, you can move that forward to, well, just increase the space within the 3rd row if needed. But the problem is the base for the 3rd row is quite low, and because of that, well, it's just not that comfortable back here. Headroom is absolutely fine, and you also have some USB ports on the side, so you're able to charge your devices as you need. As for the 2nd row, there's not a problem here. Headroom, legroom, it's very good. I'm 5'11", no problems fitting in here. The seats themselves are heated with a button right here in the center. You also can find your HVAC controls here. There's also 2 dinky small cup holders in the center here, but you also get 2 on the doors, which is probably a better placement for that. If you're thinking of fitting child seats in here, I am a child passenger safety technician, and on the driver's side, this is a Collect-Link infant seat. There's no problems getting an infant carrier in here. There's plenty of space for that. The doors, they open relatively wide, so you're able to glide that infant carrier right in. On the passenger side, this is a Collect-Fin rear facing. Once again, no issues, plenty of space. Here's myself at 5'11" in front of that seat itself. As for the 3rd row, you can't really fit rearward facing seats. There's just not enough space. Forward facing seats, you're able to, as well as boosters. You get 4 sets of upper anchors within the 4 seats here. As for upper anchors, that's the same. You get it in the same placements there. As for the front seats, very comfortable. These ST line seats, while they're not like leather or anything like that, they're actually quite supportive, and I actually miss cloth seats. I mean, I've sat in so many cars that come with leather. This is actually a nice change. They're heated, which is nice, especially on cold days like today, but sadly they're not cooled. But they do have a massaging feature, but it's more like a ergo motion seat like some other manufacturers give you, where it just moves you around a little bit, so that way for longer journeys and whatnot, you're just not stale in the seat itself. In front of me, this beefy ST-line steering wheel actually looks quite good. I like the stitching that's on it. You get a bunch of different buttons to control, like adaptive cruise and blue cruise and all that good stuff. Behind that, you do get a full digital cluster, decently customizable with different views and whatnot. I like that. No heads-up display, unfortunately. In the center is where you find the updated infotainment system. You get a wider, bigger display now comparing to before, where you can get that portrait screen, which is a little weird. But the real negative here is all the climate control is now baked in to the display, so there's no physical controls for that anymore. You still get some physical controls, but definitely not as much as before. The system, however, it does work well. There's Google built in, you got Play Store, so I'm sure you're able to add apps and whatnot later on as well. So I do like this implementation, and just the overall materials has been updated, and it does feel nice in here. The stitching that's on the center, the drive mode selector is definitely better than that push button thing that you had before. I can appreciate the interior more now than the previous generation, that's for sure. Underneath the hood, there's 2 choices. The base, which this example has, is a 2.3 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. It's the same 2.3 that's used in the Mustang. 300 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. All that is mated to a 10-speed automatic and 4-wheel drive. You can get the ST as well as the optional engine in the Platinum, which is the 3-liter twin turbocharged V6 making 400 horsepower. Let's be honest, that's going to be the engine for people who want, well, that extra bit of performance. This is going to be the bread and butter of, well, the entire lineup. And it's a good powertrain. 300 horsepower isn't little. You put your foot down it accelerates pretty well. There's fake noises and whatnot that's pumped in, and you definitely hear that. But it's a good powertrain. It's relatively quiet when you're just cruising around. It's not intrusive at all. And with the combination of Blue Cruise, it just makes long distance driving just so much more comfortable, so much just easier. Something I did find is, well, it's very well isolated. The cabin noise is kept to a minimum. It just feels very, well, upscale, and I like that about it. I like how it feels more European in that fact, because, well, the steering, it has just a little bit more weight to it. It's not light like a Toyota would be. It has a little bit more heft, so when you turn it, it feels like you're actually turning something. The suspension is firm enough where you're able to feel like there's bumps on the road and whatnot, and it's definitely not floaty, which is definitely something I appreciate. Overall, the Explorer's like a good vehicle. I mean, for the value here, it's not bad. As tested, it's 66,480 Canadian dollars. The base active model comes in at 52,830, and the full-on ST comes in at 71,000. That definitely is way more than the comparable Palisade, Telluride, and Pilot and whatnot. But for everything else, it's right in line with that. In my eyes, there's a lot to love about this. It's very similar to like the CX-90, how the engine is laid out. It does feed those rear wheels first. It's such a different type of SUV. Yes, the third row is compromised. The Palisade, the Grand Highlander, you're gonna get a much bigger, well, cabin space. But if you're just carrying 4, 5, get the bench in the rear, and you're not gonna be worried about that all too much. And there's nothing really out there that's gonna give you 400 horsepower in this kind of package. And with a tune and whatnot, those STs, they're quick. They're real quick. In any case, thank you so much for watching this video. Like the video if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Explorer in the comment section down below. Is this the revival that it needs, or is it still just kind of lost? Let me know. Take care.